morning, everyone. Happy Thursday and welcome to our webinar, The Impacts of a Cookieless World. Is that moving? Yeah. So firstly, thank you for joining us. We hope you find it really useful. I know it's half term, so it's not the best of weeks to host a webinar, but for some parents, it might be a little bit of light relief away from the kids. So for those of you who are new to Kiloover, we are a digital performance agency based in the heart of Bristol. Or as we like to call ourselves, we're a nutty team of technical experts that create highly targeted digital campaigns powered by the data. So using a cutting edge blend of human and artificial intelligence, we can do some incredible things with your digital marketing, specifically with paid per click and SEO to target new audiences and drive revenue growth. And it's this one-of-a-kind approach that makes us unique. It's also what makes us one of the UK's top fully accredited Google Premier partners. So at Kiloover, we also have access to expert teams of strategists, researchers, creatives, digital media buyers, and data analysts. And we like to call ourselves, as a group, the Audience Collective, which is especially exciting at the moment as we wait for the LA office to open very shortly. So on to the introductions. Obviously, I'm Holly. I am the marketing manager here at Kiloover. And today we are joined by our tech expert and head of digital, Martin Hughes. So over to you, Martin, if you'd like to introduce yourself quickly.
Thanks, Holly. Yeah, I've been in digital around about 11 years. I kind of fell into it when I was working for the lovely Yell in Bristol, and they closed their Bristol office. And on the very last day of our very long redundancy process, I got a job in a small agency in Bristol, and I've never looked back, really. I love it. I've been Google Ads certified for about 9 years, running Facebook and Instagram ads for 7 years, work across every platform you can advertise on, basically. And I'm very lucky that I oversee a team of around 16 PPC and SEO specialists. So yeah, I love what I do. I'm quite lucky, really.
So hoping today that you're going to know all of the answers to all of our questions.
We'll see.
So today's discussion point. So in our live Q&A today, we'll be covering defining a cookieless world. How will a cookieless world impact digital marketing strategies? Is retargeting marketing dead? And then most importantly, we'll be identifying alternative ways to gain audience insights. So firstly, what is cookieless? Let's define what cookieless means. Well, cookieless describes a way of marketing in which marketers are less reliant on cookies. But Martin, what is a cookie and what's the difference between a first and a third party cookie? Give us an example.
So a cookie is basically a snippet of code, but when you visit a website or a social media platform or something, it pops a cookie or a tiny bit of code onto your device. And then when you come back to that site, it will read the data in that cookie. It'll look at your behavior, things you've looked at, potentially things you've purchased, actions you've taken on the website, and then hopefully personalize the experience for you and make it easier. You know, you'll automatically log in when you land on the site and all these wonderful things. So third-party cookies are where other providers potentially place cookies that then track you across multiple sites and things like that. So the cookieless world is a phrase that came around early last year when Google announced they were removing third-party tracking from Chrome, their browser, which accounts for about 55% of all global traffic. Other browsers actually did this a couple of years ago, but with Google doing it, it's a big thing, because the majority of people do use Chrome in one form or another. So first party cookie is basically data you own effectively. It's your cookie, it's your data. Third party is third party providers, software companies, advertisers, of course, and things like that.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of what we'll be discussing today is alternative strategies to how we can sort of gain audience insights with the demise of these third-party cookies.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And also don't forget, everyone, if you do have any questions as we go along, either drop them in the chat box or Q&A, and we'll come and answer them at the end. So forces for change. So how has this cookieless world come about? What are the reasons? And explain your thoughts on this, Martin.
Yeah, this has been coming for a while. We've got GDPR, obviously, in the EU and in England, of course, Britain, I should say. And it's basically because users want greater privacy. I think the Cambridge Analytica scandal of a few years ago really opened people's eyes about how much data is being collected on them and what it's being used for. You know, I think people can generally put up with some personalized ads and things like that, but especially somewhere like the United States, where you can still target ads politically, people started to realize it was actually shaping how our lives are run and things like that, not just the advertising we see online. So there's been a huge backlash and governments have responded, and now the tech giants are being forced to respond to this. I think that's how it's come around, basically.
It's been a long time coming as well, I think.
Really, yeah, it really has.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Anyone in the tech world is not surprised, but explain a bit about the implementation of Apple's iOS 14 and Chrome, etc., and Facebook, and how that's affected or exacerbated these changes as well.
Sure. So Facebook is probably the guiltiest party of all of the tech giants on this.
Yeah.
Facebook collects an amazing volume of data. I've read studies where people have actually written to Facebook and requested the data that it holds on them, and it comes through in reams. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of pages of data on their behavior, on their interactions with their friends, with companies, with, you know, on their messaging habits and all sorts of things. It collects way too much data. And I think the average app that you use on your phone at the moment, or historically, has around 6 third-party tracking cookies in it. So that's at least 6 organizations now that are collecting your data, as well as the app owners. And of course, they sell this data and they use this data and they share this data. So Apple got ahead of the game a little bit and suddenly decided and announced that it was going to stop companies tracking its users once they leave a particular app. And of course, the particular app in question was Facebook. So Apple traffic is significant. People on Apple browsers is significant, and Facebook reacted very badly, threatened to sue, and they're still doing it. But as of April 26th in the UK, Apple stopped tracking, and basically now it's had a massive effect on Facebook. Facebook's actually started retiring a lot of its products, such as attribution modeling. And it affects 2 things. It means if you're on Facebook and you click on an advert, Facebook now can't track you when you visit that website. It can't track your behavior. It can't see what you're doing. It can't see if you buy something, if you communicate with business. And that potentially, in theory, can have a devastating impact on its advertising effectiveness and reporting. So that's in place already. That's started,
So when we see all these targeted ads, you've been on ASOS looking at sandals, and all of a sudden you get these highly specific targeted ads. It's those cookies to blame.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've suddenly stopped getting those sorts of adverts, and now, like me, you're getting funeral adverts and insurance for over 55s, you know, it's because you've opted out of the proper tracking. Yeah, that kind of thing. So sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I guess this means we move on to next. What are the impacts? What does this mean for businesses, and what are the sort of priorities that you think are most important these changes are going to affect?
So the biggest impact, obviously, we've seen is on Facebook and Instagram advertising at this point. So what we have noticed almost within a week or two of April 26th hitting and the changes rolling out, was significant changes in the Facebook reporting that we were providing. So if we were reporting directly through Facebook, the interface itself, we would see, I don't know, for argument's sake, conversions or sales coming in at £2.50 per sale. Within a week, that had risen up to £7.50, £10. So all of a sudden, then it looks like the campaigns, the performance has just fallen off a cliff effectively. And when you're working pretty rigorous, return on ad spend targets, all of a sudden, what was a profitable campaign suddenly looks very unprofitable. So you have to take into account all of a sudden that a huge proportion of its reporting has suddenly vanished. It just can't see what's happening. So there are solutions, obviously, you Google Analytics or any other analytics platform that you may well be using can still provide you with insights and data. So of course, we had lots of clients, we forewarned all our clients it was going to happen, but we couldn't predict the actual impact we were going to see. Nobody could at the time. So luckily, when our clients started, quite understandably getting on the phone saying, look, what's going on? We could point to the fact that this is what's happened. Here's the almost boundary of where we were visible to semi-visible. And then look at Google Analytics, and we could actually see that the Facebook campaigns were still delivering sales at the previous volume and things like that. But obviously, if you were only using Facebook reporting, it looked disastrous, absolutely terrible. So yeah, it was interesting. So that in itself is one impact, that the reporting looks terrible through the interfaces. The other impact, which we're still trying to gauge the size of this at the moment, is the kind of reduced audience sizes now that are going to be available to Facebook, the accuracy of the targeting and the audiences. We used to run certain campaigns for particular types of item or holidays where we'd only target iOS users. Well, that's just not terribly feasible now and things like that. So we don't really know the impact on audiences at the moment. We are seeing disruption, but we couldn't really give an accurate forecast on it at the moment.
And I guess that with that retargeting as well, that affects personalization of the campaigns.
It will do, yeah, because we're all used to now landing on our favorite websites, and it's relatively personalized. If you think Amazon's the perfect example, you land on Amazon, it's showing you products you bought that it knows you may need a top up on soon, i.e. coffee pods or washing things and things like that. Other sites you land on, you're automatically logged in. If you're giving people the option to opt out of all tracking in your privacy policy, all of a sudden then those elements start to be affected. So the long-term effects of the increased privacy are lack of personalization, both in ads and website experience and things like that. So you need to be careful about how you counter that, because there are ways. There's always ways. So I think we're going to touch on that as we go through.
Retargeting as well. I guess we've mentioned that, but for those who only have that method in place, then it's time to start looking at alternative strategies ASAP, I guess.
It is, yeah. And retargeting, again, if you're reliant on platform pixels or cookies, I should say, being on your website, that all of a sudden may not be being tracked anymore, your retargeting may become ineffective. But there are lots of other ways that you can retarget, and not just through paid ads. Obviously you can use audiences who visit the website, as long as you're still able to track that. Email marketing is ever more crucial now, and a lot of studies are saying that actually over the last 6 to 9 months, the conversion rates for email marketing are probably the best of all the digital channels, which is interesting, and things like that. It's overtaken PPC. So yeah, there's all sorts of ways you can do it, but really it's about making sure your analytics can track people still. If you give people the option to opt out of analytics, then you are potentially in trouble as an advertiser and a website owner, I think.
Right, let me go. So this is interesting. So in February 2020, Google announced that it would not be introducing any alternative identifiers to track individuals as they browse across the web, nor will they use them for products. So what are your thoughts on this?
So this is kind of what dropped the bomb on the whole industry, really. Google announcing this, because they're not going to develop products at the moment because they know that legislation is going to continually evolve, and the vast amounts of time and money they would have to put into developing new products, it could be obsolete by the time they actually get to roll it out. So what Google are doing, obviously, they're transitioning people from the standard traditional Google Analytics onto Google Analytics 4 now, which gives you a lot more behavioral data, which is really useful. And also they're just going to evolve naturally. If you're using Google AdWords and you're using any advertising platform, and your main focus is impressions and clicks and social media engagements, the good news is the privacy elements are not really going to affect any of that. You can still report on all of those elements very accurately. It's what they do when you go to your website that privacy is going to be the key element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing to sort of emphasize is it's not just Google's browser Chrome that this affects. It essentially affects all browsers, and the third-party cookie is something that's been a long time coming in terms of disappearing completely. It's just a phase out, and Google with 2/3 of the market share perhaps, or even less, but it's a big chunk.
Yeah. Chrome accounts for about 55% of all global traffic. Yeah, so it's huge. Yeah.
Okay, so quick fixes then. So how can we identify other ways to understand our audience behavior and insights? And let's give the viewers some ways in which they can start implementing now. So kick off.
Okay, cool. So first party data, as in data that you yourselves capture, is going to be absolutely crucial. It's going to be key to success moving forward. And it's fantastic because really, if you've got a website that captures data that in a proactive way, you encourage people to give you their data, their email address, their phone number, whatever it may be, because they're getting something in return. They're getting a better user experience. They may even be getting discounts. Many e-commerce retailers sign up for our newsletter. Here's 10% off your first order. Things like that. And those tried and tested techniques now are absolutely invaluable. It's absolutely fantastic because that first party data that you then own, it will steer how you evolve your website to adapt to these changes and changes that are coming in the future. You can use that first party data in a GDPR compliant manner within Google, within Facebook, and build out your own audiences. You're not reliant on their audience data. And develop very effective advertising campaigns. So the capturing and the storage of that data will be absolutely key.
Yeah, so I was going to say, give us a few examples of how to capture first party data and the most effective ways, the quickest ways to implement that if you don't already make use of it.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, you and I have had some good conversations around pop-ups. Are they good? Are they evil? Are they effective? How many to use? Pop-ups are effective. There's a lot of argument about, do you want to present somebody with that sign up and get an offer straight away, pop-up as soon as they land on their site? And a lot of companies use that very effectively. Groupon are a perfect example. You basically can't even see the Groupon site unless you give over an email address. And they've got millions of monthly users. Amazon don't need to. 51% of all e-commerce traffic basically goes to Amazon first. So they're in a nice position. But for the rest of everybody else, you really need a hook. So capturing that data when somebody lands, great idea. You don't want to overload people with pop-ups, though. Another good pop-up to capture an email address, of course, is if somebody hovers over the X to close the browser, or the back button, or what have you, things like that. And again, give people the opportunity to get something for giving you something. I think one key thing is as well, if personalization is possible on your website, you don't want to keep serving the same people the same pop-ups when they land. I think there is an argument against that. If somebody's been on your site 3 times in the last month, you probably don't want to keep pounding them with an offer if they've already bought from you and things like that. So it's finding that balance. But again, it's just about making the user experience secure. People feel that they're giving you their data, it's going to be well protected, and that you're only going to use it for newsletters and, you know, potentially improving their user experience on the website, which is key.
So I guess it's being more visible and transparent with how you're going to use people's data as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what it's like. The vast majority of people probably won't be too bothered, but
Yes.
you know, advertising success can be built on very fine margins, percentages here and there. So you don't want to alienate even 5, 10, 15, 20% of the market, because that can have a devastating impact on your performance.
Mm-hmm. So what's your next quick fix?
So when we talk about contextual advertising, I think one of the great things about this privacy, and this might be going off on a tangent slightly, is because it boils advertising back down to its base elements about good brand, good creative, you know, good user experience, and all those things that make people want to buy from you. The audience targeting going forward on particular platforms may be slightly more limited, but at the same time, it won't be on social media platforms if you're using lots of organic social. It won't be if you're relying on Google organic traffic or Google paid traffic. Facebook's the one that's really suffering at the moment. But really, it's about good brand, good quality advertising, good creative, engaging offers. All those wonderful things won't change. You know, privacy doesn't impact that. And in fact, if you come across as a privacy-focused organization, you can drive performance out of that element, really, by giving people these reassurances and using the strength of the brand and the advertising quality to really, you know, clean up on whatever audiences are available to you. The website is the key going forward. Website and social presences.
Yeah.
I think. You've got a point on here as well, make it easy to opt in to accept cookies.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely crucial. I can't make that case strong enough. One of the clients in our group, we're a little bit overzealous with allowing people to opt out of all cookie tracking. So of course, promptly the traffic dropped 85% overnight on Google Analytics. Yeah, which was devastating.
Yeah. How did that relate to sales drop?
Well, it was an educational establishment, but they were in the middle of quite a busy campaign, shall we say, and anyone who works in education knows that it's coming up to clearing.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't the time to lose basically all visibility on how the pages were performing, and particularly the new landing pages they just built. So that would be my major advice. Make it very easy for people just to accept base level tracking. Absolutely. Don't make it too easy. There are moral questions around it, of course, but ultimately, if people want a good user experience and they want a site that's personalized for them, and they want a site that's approving and involving, they need to opt into this, and then they get a better experience. Right. Cool. And as I referenced earlier, email marketing. Most e-commerce retailers do it. B2B clients tend not to be quite as on the ball with it, should we say, or don't put as much focus into it as e-commerce retailers. Email marketing is precious now. It's your data, and developing a good email marketing strategy is super, super crucial. And your website needs to be tailored, and your landing pages need to be tailored where it's incredibly easy to capture email data. And again, give somebody something for giving you that data. And you know, you'll find your uptake rates just go through the absolute roof, which is really cool. But email marketing is absolutely crucial. Yeah, we're recommending it to basically every client at the moment. What are you doing with email at the moment?
Yeah, and making sure that you're adding value, giving resources, giving assets to those customers and to the potential leads as well, so that you're nurturing those relationships.
Definitely so.
Until they're in the buy-in phase.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. CRMs, of course, another great way to store and use and automate data. You know,
Yeah.
automated journeys, and HubSpot, you know, is a very good program. There's a lot of CRMs out there. HubSpot is brilliant, but the way you can segment now your audiences and utilize them, and again, it's all that precious first party data. You're not going to be reliant on cookies for this. Can have a huge difference to your business. And the next one, I know you love, Holly, is surveys and questionnaires. Again, I'm a bit of a gaming geek, so I get surveys from PlayStation now and again, and I happily volunteer my boring opinion on it and things like that. So that's almost called zero-party data, where we proactively give out opinions and data and so forth. But again, that's vital to them, to how they tailor their advertising, how they tailor my experience on the PlayStation sites and things like that. You know, which
And
I
I
have
guess
no issue with.
these are all sort of easy to implement, relatively quick ways to sort of capture that data, which we can start implementing now.
Yeah, potentially so. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those about working really closely with your developer team, and making sure that your website, you know, the funnels are kind of mapped out. Where do we want the user to go? That's the most effective way for us to get the outcome we wish to achieve, and things like that. And at multiple intervals on any website, there should be an opportunity to capture somebody's data.
Okay, so long-term solutions then. So we're looking, I'd say Google's looking at, well, Chrome phasing out third-party cookie by, say, early 2022.
That's the timeline at the moment, yes.
Yeah. So let's look at sort of long-term solutions that you should sort of start implementing now, that will take a good 6 to 9 months to actually take effect, but will give you that data that you require.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, as we referenced earlier, the website is going to be absolutely crucial now, and they need to be designed and adapted with, you know, with privacy and performance in mind. And it's a really interesting sort of discussion point, and I know we're talking with lots of the developers we work with, particularly within the group, around how this will work. And you can achieve high performance websites that are privacy focused. There's no reason why you can't. The objectives are the same. You want to give the user a good user experience. They buy into the brand. They're happy to give over their data because they get something wonderful. You know,
Yeah.
that could be an item, it could be a service, it could be talking via a chatbot or anything, you know. But everything can be designed with privacy and performance in mind. It's a merge of the two, really. And it's quite an exciting time. It's such a fundamental shift in our industry that I'm excited to see the way websites go. Okay. So yeah, Tag Manager. So Google Tag Manager. Again, this is where your agency will probably need to work quite closely with your dev teams about tagging the appropriate pages and events on the website accurately, so we can map user behavior. And then, of course, we can build audiences out of that as well. And that's where you can get really advanced retargeting activity going across both social, search, and everything else. So yeah, Google Tag Manager can be quite advanced. You know, there's various things you can do. The interface has improved a lot. There's a lot of basic setups that you can do, but there's loads of cool advanced stuff that you can do. You know.
So would you recommend, or can you implement that yourself, or would you recommend a specialist implement Tag Manager for you?
I would say either work with your agency or your dev team.
Yeah.
To do that. Yeah. Yeah, just to make sure it's all firing and it's working correctly and it's mapped out properly.
Okay.
Okay, so chatbots. This is one of your favorites, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been talking about chatbots.
Yeah, okay, right, cool. So chatbots can be really cool. At my last agency, we worked for a large housing organization, and they did some analysis, and they were spending hundreds of man hours a month on dealing with a pretty small set of queries constantly online, through their social channels, through their email channels, through phone. So we built them a chatbot, and it made a huge difference. Chatbots, if you can get them in place, it's not necessarily high cost, It makes a massive impact to customer service. It engages users when they're on the site, if you're selling something that may be quite technical or quite complicated and things like that. And it then immediately builds some engagement levels, and it saves you potentially hundreds of man hours every month, things like that.
So could we use chatbots to sort of gain insights into audiences, or is it just that customer service element that builds the user experience?
You can gain insights, yes. So of course, you can pull data from these systems. It depends how they're set up. So one of the first ones I've experimented with in the past was just setting up Facebook Messenger on sites, so people can message you directly through Facebook Messenger, and that was really good. As anything with Facebook, there might potentially be some privacy issues, because we know that WhatsApp are owned by Facebook, and conversations on WhatsApp are shared with Facebook. So, potentially for advertising purposes and so forth. So there might be some privacy issues. I don't think there's a huge public backlash at the moment, but again, it's worthy of consideration. And anything Facebook really and privacy does need to be a considered approach at this point. Yeah. Okay, cool. And email lists we discussed. Yep, email lists are gold dust effectively now in this private world that we're moving into. Absolute gold dust. We can use them for advertising, which of course we will and do, and you can use them for your email marketing. And really, another point, although it might sound like I've kind of slated Facebook slightly, is the importance of organic social. Organic social now doesn't suffer from these privacy issues. What you're doing there is you're building social media communities who are engaged with your brand, and hopefully engaging with other members of the community in a positive manner. The building of organic social now is very crucial, particularly on Facebook, if the advertising is going to be wobbly for a little while, which it may well be. So yeah, really good, really engaging organic social, crucial going forward. That would be what I would say.
Yeah, so love it or hate it, social media is not going anywhere. If anything, you need to set more of your resource towards building strong campaigns, I guess.
Yes, as with anything, it's about presence. Really, you can reach as many people on social as you ever will through your site. So you need to put the same love and attention and creativity into your social side as you do your actual website, because they're one and the same effectively.
I have a question here which might be relevant to what we just discussed. So it says, do you think the removal of cookies has stemmed from a misunderstanding of tracking from the general public and misuse of personal data from a few bad guys?
That's a good question. I think, to be honest, I think if the general public knew how much data was being captured, they would be terrified. I think I don't think it's a misunderstanding, because I think every big organization is guilty of it. I mean, credit card companies were selling that data onto Facebook, so you could be targeted with financial services ads. It goes across the range. Every big corporate entity was capturing data and using that data and sharing that data and selling that data. And yeah, it's long overdue. It's been effectively the Wild West. It's been unregulated, but now the regulation's coming in pretty sort of hard and fast.
Right. So the future of digital. So it's no surprise that the landscape of digital is forever changing.
Yeah.
But how do you envisage the next couple of months to evolve as tech companies sort of adapt to the cookieless world?
So the pace of change in tech at the moment is amazing. It's fantastic. I mean, there was a study released at the end of last year that said the penetration of e-commerce into the digital landscape was greater in the first 5 months of the pandemic than in the previous 10 years. Like retail sales in China for the first time in 2021 e-commerce is predicted to account for 54% of that. It's the first time in history any country
Wow.
where the majority of retail sales will be online, which is staggering. And so it's only going one way. And of course, we're getting more and more platforms. TikTok has come through as a huge, huge player. And it's no coincidence now that TikTok have immediately got a partnership going with Shopify, which is a good platform. And Shopify, there's a lot of Shopify sites nowadays. And TikTok have got straight in there with a partnership with them. So Shopify websites link seamlessly into TikTok. Facebook have got a new API, so their site, so your websites can link into that. So social media platform shopping is going to be absolutely huge. You can't buy directly on a lot of social platforms at the moment, but I suspect within a year or two you'll be able to buy directly on absolutely all of them.
So that's Instagram, Facebook, where you can just click and buy straight.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And that's inevitable, I think. The other big element really is holistic marketing solutions. You know, if you're super reliant on one channel, and potentially that channel becomes ineffective, either through privacy or lack of audience data, things like that, you need holistic marketing solutions now, which is all about search, social, and email. You know, I keep saying email, but search, social, and email, really. The three need to work very, very closely together.
Yeah.
And again, going back onto the website side of things, ensuring that when you're having a website built, that it works seamlessly with the various social platforms. Not so easy with something like LinkedIn, possibly. It's not the friendliest platform, but for your TikToks, you know, potentially Snapchat, of course, obviously YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, the real big ones, Pinterest, of course, which has come on leaps and bounds in the last year. The better your website works with all these sites, the better performance everything will have. So yeah, it's going to be absolutely key. And from a personal perspective, I think what you're going to see is, which is long overdue, to be honest, is website developers and digital marketing agencies working much more closely together. I think historically there's always been a thing where developers don't like being told to change stuff by marketers, and then the marketers blame the devs when it doesn't work. And we've all been guilty of it, and it's a very common theme. But I think going forward, I think you'll see the best agencies have a really good blend where they're building websites designed for performance, you know, performance across Facebook, performance across email, performance across Google. And that to me is the future, really. It's all elements of the marketing teams now working very, very closely to ensure that one, privacy objectives are met, and two, performance is ever evolving and improving. That's kind of where I see it.
So it sounds like as digital marketers and as business owners, it would be very good within your budget to put a large chunk of it as priority towards optimizing your website and now.
It's definitely something that needs to be looked at. Yeah, absolutely. Right now. Yeah. Start having a look at it. Start speaking to your developers. Start analyzing how you're capturing data. Where are the points on your users' journeys where you can theoretically grab an email address, you know, give them something, incentivize them to continue. Not just necessarily at point of purchase. Ideally, we want browsers or people who are researching to come onto your site, and it's worth them giving you an email address, because then immediately we can advertise to those guys.
Okay, cool. Right, so next steps. So I think it's quite clear that if you're currently relying on third-party data for your advertising and marketing purposes, that it's time to start considering the alternatives now. And what we've done is, for all of you that have registered, and thank you very much, we will be sending via email your cookieless calculator, which in essence gives you a really good way to identify your current website, and then to look at all of your different marketing channels and to audit which needs looking or attention first, so that you can prioritize your plan of action to try and mitigate the risk of losing data with the demise of the third-party cookie. Okay, question time. Perfect. So Martin, I have a question here, and it says, so if Facebook is not as effective and more expensive, do you think companies will just switch to Google Ads?
No. So it's not. This is a thing to sort of keep in mind. Facebook isn't necessarily more expensive and less effective. It's just in its reporting interface, it looks like it is.
Okay.
So the odds are actually it's probably still delivering quite well and are the same sort of level, unless the audience has been absolutely hammered, shall we say. Google Analytics, if you're tagging up your Facebook ads with tracking URLs, can read that it's Facebook paid traffic down to campaign level, down to advert level, as long as you're putting the right URL strings in. And you can still see if Facebook is being effective. You know, it's good to kind of get a kind of baseline of performance up to April 26th through Google Analytics and Facebook, and then look at the data after April 26th. If you notice sort of sharp declines in Google Analytics from your Facebook ads, that potentially indicates that there's an issue with the audience that you've got selected, and you might need to revisit it. If the performance looks steady, even though it looks terrible in Facebook, that means that campaign is still delivering at the level you need it to. So always consult with Google Analytics. Facebook reporting probably will look a bit terrible.
And coming on to Facebook,
yeah.
We'll have another question here actually. What's the most effective way to track performance on ads level when there's such a gap between reporting figures on Facebook versus Google Analytics due to their view-through window? That's convoluted.
No. Yeah. So yeah, there's always been, unfortunately, a historical gap with the way Facebook reports data and the way Google Analytics reports data. And the general consensus was that Facebook over-reported slightly, and Google, because it didn't like Facebook, always under-reported. The truth tended to lie somewhere in between. And there are more advanced ways of tracking that require sort of deeper analytics solutions. There's something called floodlight tagging that you can put in place that in theory attributes various stages of the journey to the correct source. Facebook themselves actually brought in a really good attribution modeling system that they've now announced they're retiring because of this, which is unfortunate because that gave you a lot more attribution models to play with, and you could link your Google Ads into it and everything else. Normal base level free Google Analytics struggles to give you decent attribution models, unfortunately. There are more advanced paid for solutions. Suite Analytics is one. There's various Adobe suites. There's Analytics 360, obviously, which is an enterprise level solution that gives you much better data and obviously floodlight tagging capability and things like that. But you can use something called, if you just Google search Google URL Builder, that'll take you to a tool where you can put in the URL of the page you want to use, the source medium, content, campaign names, and things like that, and build a tracking URL that Google Analytics can read. And then if you've got a Bitly account, you can shorten it to a short link and then use that in your Facebook ads. And then when you go into Google Analytics and have a look at the source medium report and set up, just click something called a secondary dimension. You can then split it out by campaigns and still assess the impact of your actual Facebook advertising. If anybody wants a sort of follow up on that, I'm more than happy to jump on a call and do a screen share with you and just show you what you need to do. So yeah, just send you the link and so forth. But yeah, that's you can track it. Attributing accurately using the free platforms is difficult. This is why it's a shame that they're removing Facebook attribution, because it was a much more in-depth attribution modeling system than Google Analytics.
So we've talked about first and third party cookies, but what's zero party data? Because that's a new term that's sort of coming through.
Sure. So zero party data is where people voluntarily give data over. It's not a kind of official description. It's just I would say a buzz phrase. I mean, they're all buzz phrases effectively, aren't they? Again, something like a questionnaire is where they're voluntarily given. a whole load of information.
Oh, another question from Martin. So does using UTMs to track not rely on cookies?
So yes, it does. As long as people are opted into your Google Analytics tracking, that's fine. If they opt out of your Google Analytics tracking, we're all doomed, basically. That's kind of the gist of it. So the UTM tagging effectively just goes onto a link. Yeah. So Mandy Berry. Yeah. So yeah, if you want, I can have a follow-up session with you on that and show you where to find it.
What else does, hang on, there's another bit. It says, when third-party cookies are phased out more and more,
yep.
More and more websites allow people to opt out of third-party cookies. Will UTMs become less effective?
So, potentially so, yes. This is why it's going to be absolutely crucial that you make it incredibly easy for users when they land on your website to opt in. As long as they allow basic Google Analytics or GA4 tracking, will be fine. UTMs will still be effective because Google Analytics will still read those fine. What the future holds, whether that in itself becomes ineffective, I dread to think. So yeah, I don't know. But at the moment, that's fine. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on using WhatsApp Business as almost a chatbot, customer experience, and potential audience insights?
Again, because it's a Facebook product, I think if you don't want to limit yourself to people who are not concerned about privacy, it's potentially not the best option, simply because they announced that they will be sharing data with Facebook. You know, that was an official announcement. Some of the chat data that goes on will be shared with Facebook. And the only reason that's going to be shared with Facebook, let's be honest, is for advertising purposes. So, yeah.
So I guess not the first port of call if you're trying to be privacy friendly, compliant, I guess.
No, if you're trying to be a shining light, I wouldn't use it, no.
Okay.
No.
Let's have a look at it. Any other questions? Did we discuss timescales?
Yes, early next year when Chrome is going to come into effect. Yeah.
So start implementing these alternative strategies now, I guess.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, I think that's all questions for now. Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. Well, that's it. So thanks very much. Thanks very much, guys. I hope you found it really useful. Before we go, we do have our next webinar on the 7th of July, how to audit your content and website for SEO and lead generation, with our head of SEO, Sam Jones. That's going to be really interesting because who doesn't want to increase lead gen and potentially boost sales? And Sam's got a plethora of knowledge which he can share. So that's going to be good. But yeah, thank you, Martin, so much.
Thank you. No worries. Mandy Berry, I think it was. If you drop us your details, I'll get a follow-up call booked in with you.
Okay.
Cool.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure to follow up on that. And yeah, if anyone continues to have any further questions, drop either myself or Martin an email, and we'll be sure to follow up.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Great stuff. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.